Yngwie probably never had a gold album in the States, and probably came close on some, maybe. But you still think, like most bands, they wouldn't have made a lot of money out of that, but he's a solo guy, so then he's just paying guys to be in his band, so he takes a lot more money, and that's how he has Ferraris and shit.
Yeah, exactly right. Because you figure if you make 10 grand and you're a band, you take the expenses off and then you split it up. Whereas Yngwie, I know for a fact in the beginning especially, he was just taking all the money and paying people's shit. Even today, you know, to save money, he just has Nick, the keyboard player, and a drummer and a bass player. And then Yngwie he doesn't want to pay a singer. So Nick and him do the singing. So Nick's getting paid to be a keyboard player, singer, and then he just changes bass players and drummers at whatever.
Yeah, his recording was pretty wild. I can't remember what it was that stood out, but I was like, what is he doing?
Drum machine.
Yeah, that's what it was. I was like, what the fuck?
Drum machine. So he doesn't have to pay a drummer. Yeah, he's
that doesn't even seem like that would be just an outrageous expense to just have like that, where you find a drummer who can cut it at his house or something.
Oh my God. Yngwie had a studio in Miami. He could have cut drums. Stupid thing is, he had the money to cut maybe $2,000 you get a drummer and cut real drums. Yngwie wants control. He wants control of every beat.
Was he like that in Alcatrazz at all, where he's telling people what to play?
No, because he likes chopsy keyboard players, and I'm not a chopsy keyboard player. I'm not a whiz kid. You know, I don't do that. Never did. But he and I wrote songs together, and he loved what I was playing. He goes, man, that's great. That's great, man. Play that. So it wasn't like he was on my ass going, you know, I got this keyboard idea, play this, or can't you play faster or play this? You know, we got along great. We wrote songs. Wrote a lot of those songs on that first record. So he's a control freak. He just hears it in his head. He wants what he hears. He doesn't want your opinion. We played a show in Florida, and Nick has a band, and he opened for us. So Nick and I were just talking, and he goes, yeah, Yngwie just wants to shred. So he said, live, it's a shred fest, because Nick can shred. He's that kind of keyboard player. And he said, it's just a shred fest. But you got to have songs and melody, and Yngwie may have cool melodies and in there somewhere. And I've heard his newest records, top to bottom, multiple times, being at Joe's house. And it's so much shredding that you can't stay focused on the song. When the vocals come in, you're like, well, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. But they come and go, and then you're off in space. And you just, you know, he'll never make it, you know, in the real world doing that. And he doesn't. He doesn't sell many records. And his concerts, you know, he sells 750 tickets, 1,000 tickets. So ironically, Yngwie does that, but he likes he's got control of everything, and nobody tells him what to do, and he can do whatever he wants, and he blah, blah, blah. But
that's what he plays, huh? He plays to about 750 a night?
Well, I mean, I know for a fact that a lot of these venues, 1,000-seat venues that he plays, he doesn't sell them out.
I had interviewed Jeff Young years ago. He said he tried out for you guys, but said that Graham Bonnet's vocals were all pre-recorded.
That's true. Graham's vocals, for the 5 years that I worked with Graham, this recent 5 years with the Graham Bonnet band, all his vocals were in the Mac. I programmed it all. I did it all. So, and the drummer ran it live. We played to a click live. And because he just couldn't sing. He didn't have the wind. Not only his voice was shot, but he just didn't have the wind. He has asthma or something, I don't know. But he's good at it. I mean, he got really good at doing it. But we got to the point where we're doing an 18-song set, and he'd sing maybe Since You've Been Gone or All Night Long or something. Lost in Hollywood. Out of 18 songs, he might sing 2. And there were nights when he would come to me and say, "Oh, Jimmy, man, 15 minutes before showtime," he goes, "Man, I can't sing anything. I'm just tired. I didn't get any sleep last night." And so I'd have to go out to the computer and make sure that all the songs are on. And then sometimes he'd come say, "Well, I can do All Night Long tonight, and since you've been gone." So I would go out to the computer and unmute those, or mute those. So he's going to sing them. Okay.
You just cut his mic on, or is his mic on the whole time and then he can talk?
Well, what we did was our manager, Giles, is at the house board. And Giles has one fader, which is Graham's microphone, and another fader, which is the tracks, the fake tracks. So Giles sits there and he has a set list, and Giles knows exactly what songs are on tape and which ones aren't. And so as Graham's doing it, if Graham's singing and it's one song and it's going terrible, Giles will fade in the track and fade out the real Graham. And then when the song's over, he would bring it back up again so Graham could talk and say, "Hey, thank you very much." And, so it's like a dance out there with the faders.
We came up with an interesting collaboration of people. You have Jan and Vina here from Huntington, Long Island, and Yngwie Malmsteen.
Mainstream, yes.
And so the band comes together with, are you getting together with Graham first?
Yeah, Gary Shea and I got together with Graham and worked on a couple of songs. And then we needed a guitar player, obviously, and a drummer. We knew who Graham was. Graham knew who we were. And his manager put us together. He wanted a band. It wasn't going to be a Graham Bonnet band. It was going to be just a band. Gary Shea came up with the name Alcatrazz, and away we went. Started auditioning people. We went through several drummers.
Yeah, Clive Burr from Maiden.
Worked with him for a couple days, and that didn't work out. Great guy. Really good drummer, great guy. Just not the right drummer for the band. It's one of those cases of it really was a musical thing where it just wasn't working. Got along with him great. It wasn't that. It was just his style of drumming. I guess he played with Maiden too long. It just didn't work out. So he went back to England, and then we found Jan Uvina, who had just gotten done with an Alice Cooper tour, and Jan came down and auditioned, and he just worked perfect. It was like, okay, that's the guy.
Was there a courtship with Yngwie at all?
No, it took about 5 minutes. We auditioned a couple of guys, and then somebody told our manager, there's this guy, somebody at a record store told our manager, "Hey, you got to check this guy out." And so Andy looked him up and said, "Hey, you want to come to audition?" And he came to rehearsal to audition, and we played some Rainbow songs, which Yngwie was right at home with anything Rainbow,
of course.
Ritchie Blackmore. We played 2 or 3 songs, and we knew right there, like, okay, this is the guy. He was pretty out of control kind of thing, a little bit sloppy and really loud and, not focused. But I mean, he played great, and he was a fun guy. It just seemed, and we were moving. We were like not fucking around. It was kind of like, this guy's working. Let's do it. Cause we had a deal. We had a record deal, and the record company was impatient. They said, "You guys need to get a guitar player." Cause we had a guitar player and a drummer lined up, and it fell apart. So we had to do something quick. And Yngwie worked out great, so we were off and running.
Rockshire Records, I read something where like the feds swooped in and the artists lost their master tapes. Is there any backstory to that?
Well, we had finished the record, and Rocky Davis, who owned the label, Rocky's wife, Shirley Davis, worked for Hughes Aircraft Corporation, and she worked in their medical payment section at Hughes. So she was writing checks to Dr. Rocky Davis to the tune of, nobody even knows, millions of dollars. And so it finally caught up with them, and the feds came in, and Gary Davis, which is no relation to Rocky Davis, was the president of the label. Great guy. and really liked us. And he says, guys, there's something going down here tomorrow, and you guys need to be released. So we got a release before all that happened. The masters stayed at the studio. They took everything. They took control of the studio. They didn't do anything with it, but all the tapes that were in the studio, the 24 tracks, stayed there. And so those just over the year, they disappeared, and we never knew what happened to those. So the label went under, called on a Monday, and by Tuesday, Wednesday, our manager was already talking to Capitol Records. So we were not hung up in any of that.
But as far as the Rockshire Studios, one thing I just wanted to know, because it said you recorded the album there.
Yes.
Do you recall what kind of console was in there?
Yeah, a beautiful Neve. I don't remember exactly what model, but it was a nice board. Because the chief engineer that Rocky had hired knew what he was doing. I mean, he knew what to look for. So the studio was built properly. It was a Neve and Studers, and I don't remember what the monitors were, but NS10s were the small monitors. But I don't know, there was big in those days. You know, they had the monstrous wall, probably Urie's or something. The only problem with the studio was extremely small. So that's the only mistake they made. They had all this space down there because it was an industrial park, and Rocky owned some of it, and they were leasing some of it. So there was plenty of space. The rehearsal place, my God, you could have built 4 studios in that rehearsal space. But they picked this small storefront of an industrial park. Like when you go in, there's the office part, you walk in the door and there's a front desk. And well, that's where they built the studio, was in one of these smaller spaces. So in their mind, I think when they built it was going to be fine for doing what they needed to do. But they had no drum room.
I was going to say, that was definitely a question I wanted to know. Just sorry to interrupt, but just but the drums, did you record the drums there?
Yeah, they were terrible.
I know. I was going to say that they sound so thin, almost out of phase. And I know it's impossible to, most drums are out of phase somewhat because of all the mics, but it almost sounds to me like severely out of phase.
Well, Dennis Mackay was the engineer who had done Judas Priest and Al Di Meola as no dummy. Dennis at the time had a severe drinking problem. And it wasn't the fun drinking problem like Mike Stone. But Dennis was trying to get us to use a Simmons drum kit. And we cut some demos with the Simmons. And then we all listened to that and went, oh my God, this is horrible. Then we switched back to real. The truth is, knowing what I know now about recording, we could have gotten a good drum sound in there. It wasn't the record plant. And it was lower ceilings, but it was a proper room. The room was acoustically proper. There were no horrible reflections here, and you could have. In those days, though, people were trying to get this big ambient drum sound right out of the gate, record it that way. And you couldn't do that in that room. So in hindsight, if they would have just recorded the drums normal, just mic'd them up and recorded them normal, forgot about the room mics and all that shit, and recreated that with reverb if they wanted it. But Dennis was on the moon when he did that, and just didn't do a good job.
What, he's like showing up just drunk, or?
Basically, yeah. And he got the job done, but I mean, he was not in good form.
Why did you use him as a producer?
It was a political thing. Andy Truman, oh boy. Our publicist, we had a publicist in LA, and he had some pretty big people, and he was managing Dennis Mackay, this publicist. So Andy was good friends with the publicist, and it was kind of a political thing where, like, hey, Dennis Mackay has recorded this fast guitar playing before, Al Di Meola, and Judas Priest. So we thought, Andy thought, and I get his thinking, Dennis would be perfect for this. He's English, so we get the English engineer thing. But in hindsight, he would have been fired the first 2 or 3 days. He wouldn't have lasted there's no way he would have done the whole record. I mean, we just started recording and it'd been like, okay, he's out of here. Yeah, because he was just, I don't know. I think he was just drinking too much and making very bad choices.
How long does that album take to record?
Gosh, the actual recording, probably a couple of months. We rehearsed the songs. We pre-produced all the songs were done. Recording wasn't, and we played live in the studio. So even though we replaced things, it was, the vibe was there to begin with. We didn't have to we didn't have to fake it. I mean, we were playing live, so.
With Yngwie, is he pretty quick in the studio?
Yeah, he didn't mess around. I mean, he knew what he wanted to play. What's funny is a lot of people have this illusion that Yngwie played like a Hiroshima Mon Amour. People have this illusion that Yngwie just shredded over everything, and he didn't. That's a very melodic guitar intro, and the soloing out of that intro, he shreds the last bar or something. He tops it off with the shred and builds it up with the shred. And that whole song, he's playing very mature. It's not like he's just some kid just wailing over everything, because he didn't. And a lot of the songs were like that. He was a good rhythm player, and like in Too Drunk to Live, I mean, his rhythm in that was killer, and he wasn't soloing all the way through that song. He did his parts, but even the parts were written like classical parts, everything was written out, so to speak. But he'd ad-libbed a lot of those solos. He had maybe toyed around with a few ideas, but yeah, he played them pretty quick.
What was the budget for that album?
No budget. We had it wasn't a checkbook because it was all in-house. We were recording in Rockshire Studios, so we could record as long as we needed to. 6 months, we could have been at that studio for 6 months. So there was no budget for the actual studio. Like, we weren't paying $1,000 a day for the studio or anything like that. Dennis Mackay got paid, somewhere between 20 and 40 grand, and probably a point or something off the record, non-recoupable more than likely. And the second engineer on that record worked for Rockshire, so he was on the payroll. So he wasn't, it wasn't like we had to pay this other engineer X dollars. I mean, he was getting paid by Rockshire, the record company. So the expenses that we had were, I don't know. And the rehearsal place, they had a sound company, big sound company, and they did big shows. So this rehearsal place was like a real pro rehearsal place, big, probably hold 1,000 people in that room. And we rehearsed there. The record company owned it, so we could rehearse there as much as we want. Again, there was no ticket we're paying by the day or hour or anything like that.